Hi, good morning to you. Jill Tonks, Resilience Coach here. Thanks for listening today. And today I want to talk to you about the F word. Now, it might not be the F word that you're thinking of, the one that I say a lot when I'm stressed. It's the other F word, which actually is behind the swear word that begins with F, which is fear. It's been really prevalent in my conversations in the last few weeks, and it's really interesting. It's been showing up in very different ways. So it's fair to say, and it's good news, that some people who pre-COVID, pre-lockdown, were having a really difficult time in their life, personally and professionally, have really valued and benefited from the time spent at home, the ability to kind of get work done and just simplify life, and have found that it's really transformed really how they are, where they are, and been a really positive experience despite the challenges. Other people have experienced lockdown very, very differently in much more negative ways. They've missed being at work and the connections. They've found working from home difficult, parenting from home difficult. There's been lots of fear around loved ones, all of the things that I've talked about before, and it's all fear related. So fear comes in many forms. It comes in the fear of perhaps going back to work and losing touch with what's important and all the changes that you have made. It's a fear perhaps of, will things be safe enough for me? Will I feel comfortable enough to go back to work? Are my workplace doing enough to kind of protect me from this virus? It's a fear of, if you know somebody who's been furloughed, who you care about, or perhaps somebody who's very close to you, how's that going to affect me? How's that going to affect them? How's it going to affect our safety, our security, our home, our income, all those kinds of things. Some people are really nervous about what they see as a storm brewing in terms of the volume of work, because for those of you who work in frontline services, you'll know that there's been an escalation in risk in domestic abuse, etc., substance misuse, and some people are kind of waiting, hoping, fingers crossed-ing that that's going to be manageable. And other people are really doubting themselves, their competence, their confidence in terms of managing and going back to work. So it comes in lots of forms, and it also comes as an anxiety, because anxiety, as I've mentioned before in the video I did specifically on emotions a while ago, anxiety is forward-facing fear. And we're still in these uncertain times with no idea when, if, how this virus is going to come back and whether it's going to affect us or not. So the survival brain, which is where fear comes from, gets very anxious and tries to anticipate stuff that hasn't happened yet. So fear, anxiety, and all its variations are really important emotions generated from the survival brain that have helped us to survive as a species. However, what happens when we feel fear, it makes us feel really uncomfortable, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it makes us feel like we're not in control. And so, usually in my experience, people go one of two ways with fear. They either overfunction, so they take too much control, take the lead, sometimes take the lead away from people when that's not appropriate, and want to kind of forge ahead and do stuff and do more stuff and do even more stuff. And that's a recipe for burnout. Other people go the opposite way and underfunction, and so they get very fearful of what's happening out there. They go into a freeze place, can't make decisions, don't want to take responsibility, give up their control and their ability to do stuff to somebody else, and they're looking often for somebody else to take more responsibility. And there are those of us that are kind of mix of the two. Now, the reality is that often the way you are under pressure and when fear visits you is often a result of how you were when you were younger. That's the reality of these things. A lot of the patterns that we have that serve us well and don't serve us well often come from our kind of history. So the key thing with fear is to, one, recognise that it's showing up. Sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not so obvious. It can be worry, it can be anxiety, it can be a need to over control, it can show up as a helplessness, a hopelessness, show up in lots of different ways. And the way you'll know it's shown up is twofold. One, you'll experience some sort of contraction in your body, a tightness. For some people it's their upper body, for some people it's in their head, for some people it's in their stomach. It's a very individual thing. It can also come as an overwhelm, because an overwhelm is an excess of things, a volume of things that you don't feel like you're on top of, so it comes in lots of ways. And if an overwhelm is something that you're experiencing at the moment, I've done a specific video of that. If you look back at the list of videos that I've done, you'll see that there. So the first thing is to notice where it shows up in your body. For me, it's a tightening in my chest. Sometimes it's a butterfly in my stomach, and sometimes it's a kind of tight feeling, but I know I've started to recognise what my particular body responses are. That's the first place that you'll notice it. The reason why it's helpful to notice it in your body is that the sooner you get a hold of it, the sooner you can do something with it. So you'll also find the quality of your thinking gets hijacked. You start worrying about things that haven't happened yet. You start worrying about things that you can't really take control of because you might not have enough information. So if you find yourself getting overloaded, overwhelmed with worry and concerns, then that's a good indicator too. So the first thing is to spot it, and then the second thing is to work out what it is that's triggering your fear. And when you put your finger on what that is, so for example, if it is about say somebody that you know being furloughed and that affecting your income or going back to work, you can begin to work out what you want. So the survival brain shows up with fear by flagging all of the things that we don't want, because that's the way that it works. It has a bias towards negativity. So when you start to perhaps write things down or have a better conversation using the word what is it that I'm concerned about at the moment? So you transform your fears into concerns. And if writing them down helps you do that, and then once you write them down, you reactivate the resources of the cortex, the thinking, problem-solving mind here, that can help you do something, choose not to do something, park that for now, etc., etc. The other thing, if you find yourself racing ahead with what-if thinking, which is your survival brain trying to control an uncertain future, because as I've said before, uncertainty is dangerous in the survival brain's filtering, and so it likes to anticipate the future, and it tends to do it in very negative ways. And I've covered this on the video on the inner critic. There's a pattern which I call a Dr. Doom pattern. Your survival brain has a PhD in future misery that hasn't happened yet. It will take you to worst case scenarios. So what you have to do is to kind of rein it in to now. Do I have enough information at this point in time to deal with that concern that I'm picking up, that fear that I have? Sometimes you will and sometimes you won't, which means that you have to park some things and just play a bit of a waiting game. So what I'm inviting you to do is, if you find yourself doubting yourself, not feeling confident or competent, or being worried or concerned about anything at all, it's your survival brain trying to tell you the stuff that needs your attention. And when you see it like that, it means that you can take back control of it, work out what it is, because fear is your sat-nav really for what needs your attention. It's your inner guide that's coming from the survival brain. So it doesn't always come in the most helpful of ways. But if you have a better conversation with yourself, if you work out what it is you're concerned about, then you can deal with each of those things in turn and problem solve. So they're my thoughts on fear. The other thing that I'd really, really encourage you to do, when fear is in town, it triggers the sympathetic nervous system. And at the moment, the sympathetic nervous system is really, really active, which is why we're all feeling quite tired and a bit weary with this situation that we're in. If you can put something in place that can help you to calm down the nervous system and trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, it means that even if you just do that a little bit, and you don't need to be sat on a mountain top in robes with your legs crossed chanting Om to bring some calm into the system. You can do it. There's some fantastic apps around, Headspace, Calm. Try those. You can get them free for a month. I find nature really calms me down. Most people go for exercise. That's great. But if you can find something that really helps you to bring your nervous system down just a peg or two, you'll find that your whole relationship with those things that are concerning you is different, because you're able to get perspective when your nervous system is a little bit down a notch or two. Because when you manage the sympathetic nervous system and you bring the system down, it enables you to access the resources of the cortex, as opposed to when the sympathetic nervous system is high and in full-blown fight, flight, freeze. The blood flow to this thinking brain kind of goes offline, which is why, as you know, one of my favourite phrases, if you know me, is that strong emotions make us stupid. So they're my thoughts for you on fear, the most important F word that there is. So hope that's been useful for you today. And I'm inviting you to, one, recognise that fear's happening in all its various forms. Your body will tell you, the quality of your thinking will tell you, the quality of your sleep will tell you. And two, translate that fear into a list of concerns and then sift through those and work out what needs your attention, what you need to park for now, so that you can problem solve and hatch a plan for all of those concerns, so that your survival brain and fear can become a gift rather than a curse. Thanks for listening, and I hope that's been useful for you today.